Welcome to Leadership. Today we're going to talk about how to give negative feedback without sounding like a jerk. Here we go. First of all, feedback is important. In fact, when employees receive negative feedback, they're 20 times more likely to become more engaged, which might not be what we thought. Now, it's important that when we're giving feedback to skip the sandwich. This is a concept a lot of us have where you do sandwich communication. So you give them a compliment or good feedback, then you give them the negative feedback or the criticism, and then you give them another compliment to make it feel good. You don't want to always do that because a lot of the times people can actually see right through that, even though we may be using that in other areas. So instead of beating around the bush, we want to cut to the chase. People react much better when they know you aren't sugarcoating the negative feedback to make them feel better. It needs to be a direct approach. And we'll talk about a little bit more later about how we can still give affirmation while giving negative feedback in just a few slides. Next, we want to make sure we are seizing the moment. Carpe diem. Lots of people feel uncomfortable giving negative feedback to their colleagues, us included. So for us specifically as Shaklee distributors, I see this going in a lot of ways. This can be towards our fellow builders, and it can be towards our members. Both of those areas we find ourselves giving negative feedback. And this is one of the places I find seizing the moment is where it's going to make a big difference, especially to our members when they have things that come up that we need to address to help them get back on the right path. So when I say seize the moment, it means we don't want to wait. We don't want to wait for the perfect moment. It's probably not going to happen. Rather than waiting to address a problem that may have arisen, we need to live in the moment and address it as close to as possible, as close to it happening. So we don't want to wait for another formal meeting or a webinar to talk to them about that. We want to bring it up as soon as we can. So if we notice that someone didn't order their auto ship this month, we shouldn't wait 2 weeks or the next month to call them about that. When we get that notification, it would probably be best to call them right then and talk to them about that and give them that feedback of, it's important to be on your program. Is there a way I can help you with that? And it doesn't have to be a condemnation. You can say positive things when giving negative feedback. We'll get into that more later. So the best feedback is in the moment. And Patty McCord, which is a former CTO at Netflix, actually brought this up in a news article I read, and she said the best feedback is in the moment rather than waiting months for a formal meeting to tell them you didn't like the way X, Y, or Z went. And I think we've all been there. I know I've had it where someone has brought up in my job, like at a review, something I did months ago that was wrong. And I always laugh and think, okay, that would have been great to know then. So it hurts both ways. It hurts us when we don't correct it right away because the behavior continues. And it hurts them because, they feel like, oh, great, you're holding a grudge against me, or you're thinking ill of me for longer than I thought. So live in the moment and address that as soon as you can and just give them that negative feedback as soon as possible. And the way we do this without hurting anybody's feelings is our focus. We want to focus on the what, not the who. So we want to make sure the feedback is about the behavior and the consequences, not about the person. So this is a good thing to remember. You want to focus on the outcome. So I'll give you a few examples. One example would be somebody is really good at taking their vitamins, and you're talking to them about that, but then they mention they haven't quite adapted getting their shakes in every day. So now it's time for negative feedback, and you could just try to build them up, which is a very good idea, but rather than putting that off until later, until they stop taking their vitamins too, or they stop doing their support calls, it's best to address that as soon as possible, because that is a negative thing that's happening. They're not utilizing their full resources of their Shaklee program. So here would be an example of how we can focus on the what and not the who. When they tell you that they're not using those shakes, you can say, you are doing so good on your goal. So you look at their goal, the outcome, on your goal of losing 20 pounds. Taking those vitamins is really helping you because it's giving you more energy and curbing those cravings. And I know you mentioned it also helped you get rid of your fatigue. I'm really, really happy for you. And I know that once you start doing those protein shakes, that you're going to be one step closer to losing those 20 pounds. So let's think of ways that we could help you get into the habit of having those protein shakes every day, because that is the next step towards your goal. So you bring up their goal, and that's focusing on the outcome. So we're looking at the goal and what they're doing. I never once said, because you're not doing this, that's an attack. That's not giving feedback, that's giving criticism. And there's a big difference. Let's look at that. So when we take the negative out, we are giving feedback, not criticism, which we just talked about. So there's a huge difference between feedback and criticism. I actually looked up the definition. So criticism is the act of passing severe judgment. It's fault finding, whereas feedback, that is the knowledge of the results of any behavior, and it's looking at how it influences future performances. So that is exactly what we did when someone wasn't taking their shakes every day. We knew it was going to affect their future, and so we gave them our knowledge of what those results will probably be. And that's giving feedback. It's helpful. Feedback is helpful. Criticism is usually not very helpful. So another way to phrase your feedback is to exclude the word but. So the reason this is important is because but is a pivotal word, and it's funny to say. So we want to avoid that. How it would sound if you use the word but, which is wrong, would be like this. You would be like saying, I am so glad you're taking your vitamins, but it would really help more if you're taking your shakes. When you do that, they can hear you flip-flopping, and they hear you saying, you're doing good, but you're not really doing good. So they walk away with a negative approach, a negative feeling, because you took a negative approach. Rather, we want our customers and our clients and our members, we want them to walk away educated and feeling delighted with the experience they had this every single time. Even if it's giving negative feedback, we want them to walk away feeling better about themselves, because that's what we're here for. We want to make them feel better. So let's make it a point to do that even when giving negative feedback. Another word to avoid is the word you, which can be difficult. But when you say you are not taking your protein shakes, that's an attack. So when we focus on the outcome like we talked about earlier, bring up that goal, you can start using less of that word you, which makes it feel much less like an attack. And of course, we always want to tailor our feedback. It's important to mold the conversation to the other person's style. For example, if you're someone who takes criticism really well and you prefer when people just tell you outright, then you might tend to give others constructive criticism bluntly. But they might actually want to be more sensitive about how they give and take feedback. So it's important to gauge what they prefer. And you're going to be the best at knowing that because they are your member most likely. A way we can do that in our group is we can utilize their personality results from their business meeting, so that's on their action list. We can think about how it went last time, so the last time we had to give them feedback, negative or positive, and see what they liked and work from there. So if we notice they liked our direct approach, okay, you can do it that way. But if you notice that when you did that direct approach, nothing happened, they stopped answering your calls, they probably didn't like that way. And it's okay to bring that up and just talk about it and say, what is a way you would prefer your feedback? And definitely utilize those personality results as well. Now, the most important thing I think of this whole presentation is that feedback is a two-way street. A study conducted by Forbes actually found that employees are significantly more engaged. In fact, it's 74% more when their managers ask for feedback on their own performance. So that's when you ask them for feedback on your performance. This shouldn't be a huge surprise, but no matter how you slice it, telling someone how they can improve, even when we do it very, very well, automatically puts a wall up between the two of you. But when you ask for feedback in return, you level the playing field. So this is a really cool concept, and this is something I want to start implementing with some of my members. And it can be really easy. When you call them to remind them about their auto ship, or even a webinar, or you're talking and brainstorming about how they can remember to take their smoothies every day, you can say, I'm really glad I get to work with you and that I get to give you feedback like this. What is a way that I can improve? Is there something you'd like me to do to help you remind you? Is there something you would like me to do differently? And just leave it open for them to talk. Some of our members, I know I have a few, don't want to talk out loud. They would rather fill out a survey. So using tools like SurveyMonkey, our MailChimp might actually also have quizzes. Maybe sending out an anonymous quiz via an email for them to send out, and you can look at the results. And you don't have to know who it was. And that's really beneficial for you and them, and it opens that communication line, so it's going back and forth. So you're always improving. And even if it is negative feedback, that's going to help you improve, just like how you help them improve. And it makes it more of an exchange that way. So for this whole thing, giving negative feedback, a Bible verse came to mind when I was putting it together, and that was Hebrews 12:7, and it says, "Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children, for what children are not disciplined by their father?" And that's just saying, when we're corrected, we're correcting people out of love. So make sure you're always correcting people out of love and not out of vengeance or anything like that. We want to make sure we're doing that out of love because we genuinely love our members. And of course we want to see them improve, just like God wants to see his children improve. And my last slide is to share with you the resource I use for this. I love it. HubSpot is a marketing software I use at my work, and they have a huge blog. It's free to anybody. Lots of really good templates for emails, for presentations, and I was able to get an article that I based this presentation off here. So if you want to read the full article, go right ahead. In the meantime, be sure to engage your members and give them some great negative feedback without sounding like a jerk.